there were giants in the earth in those days. And when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 through 7 are some of the most enigmatic verses in the Old Testament. What are these verses referring to? Was there actually giants living on earth at the time before the Great Flood? This period is often called the antediluvian period. Ante meaning before, and diluvian meaning deluge, or flood. There are early Jewish writings and other ancient texts which expound upon these verses. Josephus, the first-century Jewish historian, implies they are related to the Greek gods.
Josephus and the Book of Antiquities, many angels of God now consorted with women, and begot sons on them who were overbearing and disdainful of every virtue. Such confidence had they in their strength. In fact, the deeds that our tradition ascribed to them were called the audacious exploits told by the Greeks of the giants. But Noah urged them to adopt a better frame of mind and amend their ways. The Book of Antiquities chapter 3.
The flood of the Bible, and the Greek flood myth, are remarkably similar. Is it possible the Greek myths are not myths? Was Zeus a Nephilim? Nephilim is the Hebrew word for giants. Was his father a fallen angel, called the sons of God in Genesis 6? The ancient Greeks believed in a flood that destroyed all mankind, similar to the account described in the Bible. In the Greek myth, the flood took place during the age of Deucalion. Deucalion and his wife, Pyrrha, were warned in advance of the coming deluge and told to construct a chest and fill it with provisions. The source of the coming deluge was the anger of Zeus towards mankind. Zeus had become disgusted at the degeneration of humans, and in particular, the practice of human sacrifice. Zeus assembled the gods and decided to wipe out mankind by water. Deucalion and Pyrrha survived the flood by floating in the chest they built. There are a great number of differences between the Greek myth and the account of the flood described in the Bible. However, both accounts maintain that the world was destroyed as the result of mankind's sin, and the human race was saved as a result of a few individuals leading a righteous life. This same story is worldwide. Every culture has a flood story. Many of these stories refer to the giants before the flood, just as the Greeks refer to the gods, the Titans and the Olympians. Many scholars are making the association of these Greek gods with the Nephilim and the fallen angels from the Genesis account. The Titans being the fallen angels, or as the Book of Enoch calls them, watchers, and the Olympians being the Nephilim. But the discussion of giants on earth goes much further and more deeper than just this comparison.
Now, if you study classic Greek mythology, you run into the Titans. These creatures in the legends and the myths were partly terrestrial and partly celestial. They rebelled against their father Uranus, and after a prolonged contest were defeated by Zeus and condemned where? Into Tartarus. Do you see a parallel brewing here? I'm going to suggest to you that the legends of the ancient Greeks embody the truth of what really happened in the past, that there were these strange creatures, generating hybrids, that the Greek called Titans. And we see Zeus in many forms. We see Atlas and Hercules. Atlas and Hercules from Greek mythology were what would be called in the Hebrew Nephilim, offspring of an intermarriage between a god and a woman. And so, now these legends we obviously see in the Sumer culture, in Assyria, in Egypt. I'll show you a few things. In the Incas, the Mayan, the Epic of Gilgamesh, in the Persian mythology, and certainly in the Greek mythology, which most of us as products of Western civilization are familiar with. Also in India, Bolivia, South Sea Islands. Every one of these cultures, and the American Indians, every one of these cultures have legends of the star people. These people that came, these gods or demigods, whatever, came and cohabited with women and produced hybrids.
The Book of Enoch is one of the many ancient writings which depicts the Nephilim and their deeds. In 1947, a wandering shepherd stumbled on some writings, tucked away in several caves overlooking the Dead Sea. This collection, lost for almost 2,000 years, became known throughout the world as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Included in the scrolls is a hidden book lost for centuries which included fallen angels, bloodthirsty giants, and a warning for all humanity. This book gives an alternative and fascinating description of creation and the demise of man. It is an ancient writing filled with dreams and visions. A tour of heaven and hell guided by the angel Uriel. The Book of Enoch is named for the man who the Holy Bible says walked with God.
And Enoch walked with God after he begot Methuselah 300 years, and begot sons and daughters, and all the days of Enoch were 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Genesis chapter 5. The Book of Enoch begins with the warning to all humanity. A divine judgment has been rendered and sentence will be imposed. God tells Enoch that all life on earth will be destroyed in a violent flood, and with the story in Genesis, God blames this evil on the sons of God, angels who lusted after the daughters of men.
These angels are sometimes referred to as watchers. They keep constant watch, and they decide one day, about 200 of them, that they're going to descend to the earth. They would like to very much make contact with these mortal women.
The Book of Enoch was an expanded story of the mysterious giants, the sons of God, and the daughters of the earth, spoken of in Genesis chapter 6.
There is this quick few verses at the beginning of the flood story about giants in the land that come from the sons of God mixing with the daughters of the earth. And you stop and think, wait a minute, what's this all about? It's like it went by too fast. And you want to grab it and say, wait a minute, what was this?
They taught them charms and enchantments, and they became pregnant and bared great giants whose height was 3,000 ells. When men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Enoch chapter 7.
That these angels have crossed over this boundary that they shouldn't have. They were spiritual beings, and they were to remain as such. When they decided to descend upon earth, this unleashed upon the earth all sorts of problems. Not only these giants who are bloodthirsty and violent, but also these angels went on to teach humankind a variety of forbidden crafts. They also taught human beings how to make weapons of war.
Now, the good angels, the ones not tempted by these beautiful women, go to God and say, you know, there's a lot of bloodshed caused by these bad angels. At which point God says we need to bind Azazel, the sort of lead fallen angel, to bind him and to then cast him into a pit. We might think of this as, how do we take care of nuclear waste in the 21st century? You take it out to a part of the world where no one lives, and you bury it as deep as you can. For this community, the angel was like that sort of nuclear waste. Dangerous.
Enoch tells us an expatiated story of creation and the depravity of the Watchers, or fallen angels, who created bastard children of gigantic stature, with an intense evil nature. Their strength was prodigious and their appetites immense. Upon devouring all of humankind's resources, they started to consume humans themselves. The Nephilim attacked and oppressed humans, and were the cause of massive destruction on the earth.